As we always do, we have in our midst a, a distinguished fellow of the Institute who will be handling this topic for us. She is a partner of one of the big four, KPMG in Nigeria, and she will be dealing with the topic in the next 40 to 45 minutes. Afterwards, we'll have questions. I will take questions and answers from the members present. But before we start, I'll do a bit of introduction of the speaker, and I'll just try and do a brief profile. She's a big fish, so to say, and I want to appreciate her for honoring our invitation to be part of our meeting today. Our speaker today is Tomi Adepoju, partner and head, Enterprise Risk and ESG Services, KPMG in Nigeria. She's a partner in charge of Enterprise Risk and ESG Services, KPMG Nigeria. She also provides oversight on ESG and the Board Governance Center of KPMG. She is a highly skilled executive and has accumulated over 25 years of professional experience in business advisory, delivering quality services to national and multinational businesses on various assignments across key industries. She has substantial experience in the establishment, review, and transformation of internal audit function, enterprise risk management function, compliance management, ESG, and internal control system. She leads the outsourced internal audit functions of various companies, listed and unlisted, and she has assisted a number of organizations in establishing their compliance function, including automating their regulatory rule book. As I said before, she heads the KPMG Board Governance Center in Nigeria for KPMG, and a center which provides high-value solutions to corporate governance challenges. She has a wide range of experience in the design and evaluation of corporate governance frameworks and processes, evaluation of boards of directors, and facilitation of assessment of individual directors. She has facilitated several corporate governance training courses and board governance retreats for several clients. Tomi was a member of the technical committee set up by the Financial Reporting Council, FRC of Nigeria, to review and redesign the Nigeria Code of Corporate Governance issued in 2018. In this regard, she also played a pivotal role in leading the KPMG team that provided technical secretarial assistance to the committee. She is a member of the KPMG project management team that provided capacity support to the committee, set up by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Nigeria to review and redesign the SEC Code of Corporate Governance issued in 2010. Can go on and on, but it's just like an abridged version of her profile. She is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. I will not miss that, and a member of the Institute of Internal Auditors. She has a board readiness certificate from the IA Business School, Spain, and a certification in GRI, G4 Sustainability Reporting Process. She has facilitated various training courses, retreats for boards of directors for different organizations, including IOD, Institute of Directors of Nigeria, Society for Corporate Governance of Nigeria, and the Financial Institution Training Center, Nigeria. Fellow members of IGDS, distinguished professionals of this court, I want you to welcome with me Tomi Adepoju to deal with this topic before us this afternoon. And to support her in this, we also have two of our colleagues on the call as well. We have Yewande Adeyi, an experienced manager in ESG and sustainability, KPMG as well. We have Kayode Temenu, also from the ESG and the sustainability, KPMG. So we'll dive into it. As I said before, she has 45 minutes to deliver our paper, and at the end of the day, we entertain questions. Can we give a rousing welcome briefly to our speaker for today, Tomi Adepoju? Over
Thank
to
you
you.
very much. Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I was actually looking around my space to see where this big fish you are describing is. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Great to meet you all, and great to be in your midst. It's an honor we do not take lightly, and we are happy to be here today to share with you on the topic overview of ESG and emerging trends. I hope your Sunday is going on very well, as mine is. And so in looking at our topic, I would be looking at introduction and just trying to demystify the topic because I do see a lot of people. I recall sometime 4 months ago, we were doing a project and the company asked us to come and help them with their sustainability strategy and also come up with their sustainability framework and policies and reports. And in the course of the work, I felt it was necessary to meet with the CEO, and we had a meeting, and the CEO looked me in the face and said to me, I do not believe in sustainability. And for me, I was like, okay, you don't believe in sustainability, but you're calling me to come and do a project for you. What exactly is going on here? And we went on and on talking, and I've seen quite a lot of people, leaders, people on the streets, and most people struggle with the subject matter, ESG and sustainability. So at the introduction section, we'll try and demystify it and bring it home to why we believe it's something that all professionals and everybody indeed in the country should be concerned about. We also would then be looking at emerging trends, and then after that, we would conclude and take questions. And so looking at the subject matter ESG, the starting point for me is, what is ESG? If you can move the slide to the next slide. So what is ESG? ESG is an acronym for environmental, social, and governance, and it refers to a framework to integrate environmental, social, and governance risk, as well as the opportunities into an organization's strategy in order to enable them build long-term financial sustainability and value creation. It refers to pillars that are used to measure the environmental, social impact of individuals and the businesses. You may be asking yourself, so what exactly is the difference between ESG and sustainability? Because people often use the two terms interchangeably. Sustainability, in very plain terms, is meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. In other words, for businesses, sustainability can also mean ensuring that every operation within our business engages in such a way that they have zero or negative impact on the environment of the community or the society at large. It sounds like a cliche, but that's what exactly it really is. It's at the bedrock upon which sustainability is founded. And so when we want to then measure sustainability and quantify it, we then have to look at it in the area of environmental, social, and governance. So ESG helps us to be able to measure sustainability, and that's why you see a lot of people using the two terms interchangeably. At this point, I would then have to look at, so what exactly is the E? What do we mean by environmental? Because most times when you mention the word sustainability, most people seem to believe that sustainability is more or less climate change. That's all they ever see when you talk about sustainability, but that's not what it is. When we talk about environmental, we are talking about factors that consider how an organization performs as a steward of nature, the ecosystem, as well as the resources. Example of environmental factors include things like climate change, emissions and pollution. We are familiar with it. Sometimes you wake up and you are going out and you see haze all over the whole place, or you see the environment where you live, you just feel there's something off with the air. Those are pollutions or emissions. Energy consumption is also an aspect of environmental, whether we are dealing with fuel, direct energy consumption fuel, or indirect with electricity. Use of water, that's also a major aspect of environmental. When we start talking about water scarcity, water availability, that definitely is an area you then have to consider. Use of raw materials as well. In some countries of the world, you cannot export your raw materials to them, or they cannot import raw materials that don't have codes that they can use to trace where the materials came from. So how we utilize raw materials in such a way that it will still be there in the future, those are the kind of things we consider under environmental. Sourcing practices as well, such as responsibly sourced materials, ensuring that the materials have been planted the right way, they've been imported the right way, the people utilized in planting it are of the right age, and so on and so forth. And then management of waste and recycling, that is also a major component of the environmental aspect, and impacts on ecosystem and biodiversity is also another area. I can see a hand up. Let me just finish this slide and then I can take questions before I move on. I don't know whether that's fine. Justin?
Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead, ma'am.
All right, thank you. And so when we ask ourselves about why, so we don't have major issues, we are not like China they have so serious environmental issues. Nigeria itself faces a lot of environmental challenges. We are burdened with rapidly growing population. Still stay back on where you are. We are burdened with rapidly growing population. Can you still go back to the previous slide? We are burdened with rapidly growing population, almost 200 million plus from what we see, and is expected to double by the year 2050. So you can imagine the strain that huge population is putting on a lot of our environments in terms of the waste, the emissions, and the pollutions. And if I look at the social aspect, when you talk about social factors examine how organizations treat people or manage relationships with various stakeholders. Those stakeholders can either be your employees, they can be your customers, they can be your vendors, they can be the wider community where the business operates. Examples of social factors include your ability to attract employees, retain them, and the relationship you have with your employee, how you keep them engaged. Things like health and safety, they are all part of social factors. Our approach to diversity, whether it's gender diversity, age diversity, geographical diversity, all of those are important, and as well as providing equal opportunities for people. Those are part of the things you look at under social. The level of satisfaction of your customer and how well customers are engaged, that's part of what you consider under social. Protection of customers' data and compliance with privacy laws are major areas of social pillar within ESG. The approach to human rights risk, whether from a labor standards point of view or child labor point of view, those are major factors that are looked at. And then, of course, things like relationship with our workers and communities. We are familiar with this area because over time, there's been a lot of evolution. I often tell a lot of people that don't look at sustainability or ESG as something new. There are things we've been doing from time immemorial. It's just that we were not doing them with the consciousness that we were doing sustainability or ESG related activities. For example, we all started out with HSC. If you work in an oil and gas organization, you can see how big HSC is. You don't even have any meeting without having the HSC moment or talking about HSC post. And so there's hardly any organization in Nigeria today that doesn't have a department called HSC, and they have policies that guide all they are doing. That's how the sustainability movement started from. It went from the HSC movement. At a point, it became CSR movement, and everybody started doing corporate philanthropy, CSR activities, and we're just carrying out activities
If you disrupt the activity of the meeting again, we throw you out. Mr. Magnus, please. Maybe I think it's like we lost the presenter. Some minutes, please.
Yeah. Can you see me now? I think
Yes,
so.
yes, ma'am. Go ahead, ma'am.
So yeah, sorry about that. So we moved from CSR and just went on to become, and then at a point, the whole world then started looking at ESG and sustainability, which is where we are now. So when we look at ESG pillar, the social pillar, very, very important for us. And if you look at the S aspect in Nigeria, is actually very crucial because we are almost we have a lot of population. You see it all around you, even as you drive around. You see people begging on the street. You see people milling around your cars. Those are part of the S issues that we are dealing with as a country. And then the governance aspect. On the governance pillar, we are looking at how company policies, how the company policies itself using internal structures, functions or processes, and then roles that are aimed at achieving transparency and corporate citizenship. Examples of things in this area relates to board composition and structure. We are looking at the committees of the board, the types of director, whether you have independent or non-executive directors, board diversity, whether from a gender representation perspective, geographical perspective, experience diversity, or even the age diversity of the board. Those are part of things you look at in this area. The remuneration of the board, ensuring that one party is not carrying the whole thing. When you look at the percentage of the executive remuneration to the rest of the people, it's a major factor that's looked at in other jurisdictions. That hasn't really trickled down here. We also look at things like anti-bribery and corruption, risk management, responsible task, presence of, ability to be able to blow the whistle and have the right grievance mechanism in organization, as well as transparency and disclosures. And so a lot of organizations are looking at this area and trying to ensure that they have adequate representation on their board. They have an inclusive workforce that have equal opportunities for people, whether people with disabilities or minorities, and then that there's transparency in decision making. And so that would then lead me to why should we think ESG should matter to us? But at this point, let me take Justin's question. You had your hands up before.
I think you can continue. We'll take questions at the end of the session.
Okay, thank you. So what does ESG matter to us? Why should it matter? A lot of things. For a number of people that say ESG isn't really an issue in Nigeria, have we finished looking for? We are looking for food to eat. We don't even have forex. We have a lot of debt all over the whole place. Why should I then be spending my time talking about ESG? You know, you hear a lot of things that people say. It would interest you to know that some of the key challenges, social challenges that we are facing include poverty. We've been named the poverty capital of the world in 2021. We have over 70 million people living in extreme poverty. As at that time, with all the economic turmoil we've been facing in the last 1 year, I'm sure that has even worsened. And we are the highest in Africa. That's a major issue under S. We have inequality in our workplace across positions. In Nigeria today, in some organizations, if a lady says that she's pregnant and she's going on maternity leave, some organizations will not promote the lady. They will say, after all, you were not around, as if the pregnancy is a disease. You understand? So we still have inequality, even in our workplace. We have leadership issues. You look at the representation. Sometimes I go into board meetings and I see all males, so I purposely try to embarrass them and say, good afternoon, gentlemen, just so that they can get it. Are you telling me you cannot find a qualified female in Nigeria to be on your board? How can you have 15 men on the board and all of them are males? That doesn't work. There have been a lot of studies that have gone into the advantages of having a diverse board. You cannot even, you can't overqualify that. And so you see issues around that area. You see issues of poor access to healthcare and poor quality access to poor quality education. According to the UN fact sheet, Africa accounts for only about 2 to 3% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. And so a lot of people also push that data that, look, we didn't cause this problem. The problem we are trying to deal with was caused by the other, the other parts. Why should we be bothered about what is going on? Unfortunately, we have to be bothered because emissions cannot be they cannot be controlled into one particular location. It's in the atmosphere, and so it moves around. And what we've then seen is that the effect of those emissions that may have been generated in other places, unfortunately, and coming to this side is affecting us massively. For example, we have incidences of flooding that happens in Nigeria annually. The one that happened last year, it ravaged about 27 states. Over 1.3 million Nigerians were displaced from their homes. Lives were lost. Their livelihoods, their farms were submerged. In fact, one of the investors into the country, Olam, that invested massively in farming, they lost their investment worth millions of dollars as a result of the flood. And we're still saying, okay, investors come, investors come. At the Ican conference of, I think a year or 2 years ago, I was telling people the story of why we normally have this flooding. That is as a result of a governance issue, because Nigeria, in a short form, Nigeria, agreed with Ghana to build a dam, such that when Cameroon opens up his own dam, Nigeria's dam will be bigger. It can absorb the water. We can use it for irrigation, for hydroelectricity, and so many other things. But we didn't build the dam. We've budgeted for it. On paper, it's built, but it's never been built. And so when Cameroon opens up the water, what our own government will tell us is that we should those that are on the flood path should please evacuate, as if they will move their houses. And so you then find the flooding issue happening every year. That's a governance issue that has translated into an environmental issue of flooding. And you then has translated into social issues as well. People dying, farmlands being lost, and so on and so forth. That's a classic example of ESG. We see Lake Chad that's drying up. That's part of what has caused all of these Fulani headsmen that are moving from one part to the other looking for water, because there's no water for their heads. And people have refused to do the right thing. And so we then have Fulani headsmen issue that's translated into security issue and is affecting all of us, because there is declining arable land. And of course, the farmers can no longer go to the land. And so food is also getting expensive and scarce. And then someone sits down and tells me ESG is not our issue in Nigeria. I hope after today we can see the picture of how one little thing can translate to and so many other things. And all of these are elements of ESG and what it means for us as an organization. And the issue is that if you do not deal with the ESG risk as an organization, it's going to affect the performance and the impact of that organization. And because it ends up becoming a financial risk. And so there are things that we definitely need to look at. What are the drivers for ESG? What's making us want to look at them? A number of issues. Beyond the moral goals, there is an imperative now for an organization to look at ESG because of a number of reasons. The last decade has brought a new wave of stakeholder-driven accountability from the world's largest corporations. We've seen a lot of regulations that has happened. On the next slide, I've tried to show different types of regulations that we even have when it comes to Nigeria alone, that has happened over the period. We remember the Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principles for those in the financial services industry that came out in 2012. 5 years after, we had another one set up by NGX, and consecutively every year we've almost had one regulation or the other that are related to sustainability. Just last year, the Nigeria committed itself to developing a carbon market activation plan, and we also committed to be an early adopter of the IFRS S1 and S2 standards issued by ISSB. There has been a lot of talk in terms of ensuring companies not only issue financial statements, but also issue non-financial statements and ensure that the two are talking and can actually and are not at conflict with one another. So we adopted that, and early this year, the Financial Reporting Council released the roadmap for adoption of the ISSB standards. I'll still talk about that later. So if you go back to the previous page, so regulation is one of the major things that's been driving the adoption of ESG. And even in our own locality here, we can see that. The other thing that's been driving the adoption of ESG are pressures from investors as well as social pressures from even our workforce. A lot of the workforce now are made up of younger people. Young people are the ones, they use the Gen Zs, they are the ones actually very, very interested in this particular topic, and they push a lot. They are the ones checking product labels. They are checking all sorts of things to say, oh, let's boycott this one. This one is not doing the right thing. We will not follow you. And that pressure is a lot in other jurisdictions. For example, in the United Kingdom, Lufthansa, if you look at the logo of Lufthansa, is like a big bird that is actually covering and protecting the planet. According to them, they are like a big bird that's protecting the planet. But the airline industry has been known and found to be a major emitter of carbon. So how can you be flying planes every second, and then you are also then telling us on another hand that you are a protector of the planet? And so the German regulator banned them from utilizing. There was a product advert they had. They banned them from using that, and they told them that they needed to go and substantiate even the green claim that they've been mentioning that they've been doing, because clearly the aviation industry is a major emitter. There's also another company in Australia, Mecca. They were sued for greenwashing because they were saying that they had all the investments within their portfolio are green. But then when people looked at it, they could see that they were still investing in organizations that are fossil intensive, like that have thermal coal, for example, or even involved in alcohol production and gambling. And so when you then come out to make a blanket statement that all our products are green, then obviously you've opened up yourself for attack. So in those cases, the investor pressure was a lot. And we've seen examples of situations where even at AGM meetings, investors have refused to actually sign on directors or get them to be, their terms to be renewed because they felt they were not doing the right thing, or people are getting sued. So investor pressure and social pressure is a lot. We've also seen demands for green and sustainable products by a lot of people. The youths are asking for all sorts of things. People are also very conscious. I'm sure you are like me now. When you go to the supermarket, you want to see the content of what you are buying. And when you see what you are buying is not in line with what you want, you definitely won't accept it. We also see a lot of drive as it relates to cost optimization and transition to low carbon economy, especially in our ENR, in our oil and gas industry, pardon me. So we see a lot of cost optimization push in every organization. Everybody is looking at their bottom line. And so you are seeing people trying to see what are the ways we can reduce our costs. If we do this, will it help us reduce cost? And that's also driving a lot of innovation. We've seen companies, there was a company that we saw abroad that they actually power all of their servers, as well as is a financial services company. So all of their servers and everything in the whole country was being powered by renewable energy, and that dropped their cost significantly. We've seen what Sterling has also been able to do with the building that they just erected that has renewable energy powered around it. And so a lot of people are looking at how to optimize their cost and how to reduce their energy footprints. And then, of course, access to capital is also another driver. Investors are increasingly factoring in ESG considerations when making investment decisions. There's a slide I had that tried to show the size of the sustainable finance market. Unfortunately, Nigerian companies have not been able to access this as much as they should, whereas our brothers in Ghana and Kenya have been able to, make themselves amenable to actually, gain access into this sustainable finance market. We have over $4.2 trillion in total sustainable finance markets as at the end of 2022. I'm sure that figure has grown now by the time another study is done. Even the kind of assets that's expected, according to what Bloomberg said, we'll have about 53 trillion by the end of 2025. So a lot is happening in this market, but because of our previous stance over the years, which hopefully it is changing, a lot of Nigerian companies have sort of shunned and not paid attention to things related to ESG and sustainability. Rather, we keep pushing corporate philanthropy and CSR, but that is definitely not the whole when it comes to sustainability. And so by the time we want to approach these funds to be able to access it, by the time they ask us to show what we've done, we are not really able to show anything. And so at the end of the day, the funds remain where they are. Of course, we've seen one or two organizations in Nigeria that have been able to do it and even issue green bonds. I think Access Bank has been able to do that, and one other one. And the last driver here is relating to evolving global risk and opportunities landscape. We do see the top 10 risks that have been issued in the last couple of years by World Economic Forum. They've all been ESG related. And I'll still show the slide later on just to be able to show you what they are. So these drivers are what has been driving ESG from time in terms of companies being able to adopt it. And from here, we then go into the trends. What exactly are those trends that is happening in the area of ESG? The first one, as the world begins to shift towards a low carbon and net zero economy, clearly we are seeing a lot of people adopting sustainable development strategies that helps them to align the social and environmental mega trends and be able to stay ahead of the curve. If you look at the slide on the screen, the first one shows the top 10 risks that they had, but that's the World Economic Forum. They then projected what the top 10 risks would be over the next 2 years and also over the next 10 years. What we've seen in the last 3 years, and based on these two slides, these two graphs on the screen, is that the top 10 risk has continuously remained ESG related risk in the last 3 years. If you go back and check what WEF top 10 risk, you will see that is either they are relating to economic issues, environmental issues, social issues, governance issues, and even the ones that are color-coded as technological issues there are things that give rise to social risk if they are not well handled. Things relating to misinformation and disinformation, things relating to adverse outcomes of AI technology. Remember US when they were doing their election and all of the push into social media and all the law cases that they are dealing with now. Those are social issues. Cyber insecurity is a social issue. So if you look at these top 10 risks, they are all related to sustainability. So definitely it's something that we definitely need to look at. If we then look into the following years and we ask ourselves, what are those trends that we need to look at that would help us to be able to penetrate the market? We've shown 4 things in the next slide in terms of the trends that would really shape the market and we need to watch out for. It would also help to be able to, define ESG maturity levels for organizations. The first relates to ESG reporting. The second is regulation. The third is technology. And the fourth is data. And I will just spend some time looking at each one of them and how it would impact us. So for the first one that relates to ESG reporting, we've seen a rise in terms of the global standards that are forcing people to be able to report on ESG. And even in Nigeria, we've seen that rise of late. The stock exchange has come up with something. The Central Bank of Nigeria has come up with something. The regulators are all coming up with different things. And even now, FRC has also come up with something. So we've seen increase in the standards and regulation from the ISSB standards on sustainability to ESRS, and more are on the way. It's as if they just wake up and come up with different standards every time. And the issue now is that the world at some point then decided that, look, we have too many regulations. People are reporting on sustainability, but they are using various standards. Can we bring them all together such that is one single standard that is being utilized to report on sustainability? And that was how ISSB came into the whole conversation and offered to look at all of the different reporting standards that existed, the TCFD, the SASB, the TNFD, GRI, all sorts of acronyms all over the place. And they were able to come up with a single standard called IFRS S1 and S2 that would enable organizations, if they implement those standards, to be able to work in terms of implementing best practice in area of sustainability, as well as being able to report appropriately. And then it also then ensures that the reports that they are issuing, it's easier for them because there's reduction in terms of the number of standards that are being used. It's also easy for the users of the financial statements to be able to compare one report to the other, because what Mr. A says is the same thing as what Mr. B says, since we're using IFRS. The ease of adoption is also there, and access to sustainable finance is then guaranteed because the people that have that own the finance, they can see your financials. It's the same thing as what is being issued in every other part of the world, and it then becomes easy to be able to access all of those funds that we talked about earlier. And in terms of effectiveness, the IFRS S1 and S2 came into effect on 1st of January 2024. Nigeria was the first African country to adopt this, and the FRC set up a committee to help them look at it and come up with a roadmap, for which we were a member of that committee. And that roadmap was released recently. In the roadmap, in coming up with the roadmap, they did ask listed entities which of them would like to be an early adopter, and some organizations opted to be early adopters. For the early adopters, the reporting deadline is, the implementation deadline, is December 31st, 2023. So they commence from that period. For the phase 2 people, voluntary adopters, some also volunteered. They were given a bit of more period, and they are meant to implement between 2024 and 2027. And so by the financial statement they are publishing thereafter, it needs to show that they've actually implemented the IFRS S1 and S2. I do expect that there will be some check-ins that FRC would want to see or do to ensure that people are not waiting till last minute to be able to do this, because it's not a 100-meter dash, it's a marathon. There's a lot of work to be done. The phase 3 are the mandatory adopters. At that point, it becomes mandatory for the listed entities as well as all PIEs, as well as for 2028, while the SMEs have been given up to 2030 to adopt the IFRS S1 and S2 standards. The phase 4 people are the government and government organizations. A date has not yet been put forward for those ones, and I'm sure you and I know why. So that is in the area of reporting. And as we see, this is going to actually force a lot of people to begin to report on sustainability going forward. And of course, before you can report on sustainability, it then means that there are certain things you've done. You must have come up with your sustainability strategy, because it's the strategy that will define the initiatives that you want to carry out, which are the things you are then trying to report to your stakeholders about. You would have also had to develop your sustainability framework and policies that guides how it's being done across the organization. You would have needed to define the governance structure, who is responsible at the board level, at management level, which function is actually providing the oversight and drawing everybody together to enable us to be able to do this. Because by the time you start saying, you see that everybody, every unit within an organization has something to do with sustainability. And so by the time you are needing data, the data has to come from different people. And so everyone needs to be a part of this. And of course, training people to help them understand what they are doing. And so I'll go to the second trend, which is on regulatory support. Here it's a lot of things are happening. According to the World Economic Forum, World Economic Outlook for 2024, In order for us to be able to mitigate the effects of climate change and facilitate green transition, there's a lot of cooperation required with various parties. Climate adaptation and resilience is a major area. Here globally, there are various projects that are beginning to come up and trying to look at how do we manage this climate change? How do we mitigate it? How do we adapt? The African countries have come up to say, look, we didn't cause this problem, don't come and whatever. But of course, we also know that a lot is happening in the world. If you look at the car manufacturing industries, a lot of them have given out dates where they will stop manufacturing the kind of cars you and I are using today, that are using oil and gas, that are using petrol. If they start manufacturing only electric cars or cars that do not use petroleum, what's going to happen to us? Because we also we rely on crude oil for our sustenance as a country. And then even a lot of the things we do relies on that. So a lot of countries are then beginning to sit back, even the African countries that are the oil producing countries, and asking themselves, what do we need to do? What are the adaptation that we need to do? What are the things we need to do to ensure that we are beginning to move to renewable energy, come up with other projects, look for other low emission means of transportation? What intervention projects do we need to come up with? And those are things that would definitely begin to happen. We have the SEC coming up with rules on green bond. We have some banks that have raised green bonds to be able to fund flood intervention, renewable energy, and so many other things. We also have increased scrutiny as a result of all of this on greenwashing. Some of the examples I gave earlier on the airline company, those are examples of greenwashing, where companies are saying what they are not doing, but to be able to just belong and be among, they say things, they make statements, and when they are now scrutinized, they come under fire, and sometimes they are fined, big fines. Unfortunately, we've not really seen this a lot in Africa, but now that we are adopting IFRS S1 and S2, we are going to begin to start seeing a lot in that area, because as we project our reports, people would want to see and people will ask questions, and then we need to be sure that we are not doing greenwashing and pushing out information that does not exist. Emissions accounting is also there, especially for Scope 3. IFRS S2 particularly requires organizations to report on Scope 1 and Scope 2 within the first year of reporting, and then Scope 3, which relates to emissions, carbon emissions, within the first 2 years of adopting the standards. And that means that we then need to begin to ask ourselves, what are our carbon footprints as an organization, whether from the generator we are burning, transportation, travel, and all of those things. We will need to be able to account for all of that, and that needs to feature even in our financial statement. So there is a lot of work that will need to be done around this area. We are also seeing things like carbon market emergence, whether voluntary or mandatory. Africa itself has said that they are looking at setting up an African carbon market initiative, which was talked about at COP27, and they are looking to be able to do that in 2030. Nigeria is also set on developing a $2.5 billion carbon market, and has appointed a committee to look into this. I understand the committee has come up with a draft policy in terms of what they want to do. And once that comes into effect, clearly that market is there for us to also go. If you are able to show that you have credits that you can sell, you can then make money from that. The other area is in the area of ESG and technology, just being able to navigate a shifting landscape. And so in this area, from a renewable energy affordability perspective, we've seen a lot of organizations use renewable energy in their energy mix, because it's able to help them reduce their carbon footprint. It also helps to reduce their costs. And as they do all of this, part of it is then saying what kind of technology can aid in doing this. We've seen a lot of usage of artificial intelligence, which has been integrated into the business in terms of being able to generate data for people, in terms of being able to analyze ESG data and use cases, and helps in making decisions. In the circular economy drive, I'm just looking at plastics and how we are able to recycle that and use it for other things, either from reducing the use of plastics, reusing the plastics, or recycling the plastics. A lot of alternative energy sources would be required. So how we will be able to utilize municipal waste to transform that into energy, and also then be able to use the technology to speed up. I was in Ghana last week, and a company came to make a presentation in the conference that I attended. What has happened in Ghana is that they've been able to pull all their sewage into one single source. And so the company was then able to utilize that sewage. They treat the sewage first of all, and then the water in the sewage is then cleaned up, and that water is then sent back into the homes through the pipe-borne water pipes. And the water is used to, water the garden, do different things in the homes, just like they use in the UK. At the same time, the solid part of the waste is treated. The carbon aspect is removed. The carbon aspect is utilized into gas, cooking gas. And then the other part is also treated and then sent back as manure in the home, in farms and in homes. Very interesting concept. I'm not sure whether that exists in Nigeria, but I did see there's a company in Akwa Ibom, a real estate company, that said that they are building an estate whereby they will be able to utilize the waste, the sewage waste from the estate, and power the gas in people's homes. So we are seeing a lot of technology coming to play in terms of being able to help us have alternatives to what we are doing today, and also just being able to release it. I know there's a company, Packham Technology, where they have a platform that helps to utilize their software applications and data to promote and protect the environment and just connect waste generators to waste collectors, even in Nigeria today. And so they aggregate people that are collecting, all those people you see going around collecting the waste, they are working for companies. They then pull it all together. They're able to pay them. Those ones also feed it into the people that need to recycle. And so they can see the whole concept of the circularity at a go. That's the work of technology. The last area relates to data usage. A lot of data is required in the area of sustainability because there is demand for sustainable products. And for you to be able to come up with products, you would need to be able to utilize data. Just like the example I gave previously. And even to come up with our sustainability reports, a lot of data is required. And one thing we have found out is that it becomes very difficult to be able to get that data if at the beginning, the data is not imputed consciously, knowing that it's going to be used. As we implement IFRS S1 and S2, data is going to be very key. Data is money. And data would help us to be able to make informed decisions and even come up with reports that are very useful for the people that our stakeholders. An example of data management system is Microsoft's ESG tool. So Microsoft has come up with a tool that can help organizations to be able to pull all their data together, even all the carbon accounting that we were talking about. It can help feed everything in, and then you can see where you are as an organization and even all the way to reporting. But of course, that is there is a global tool, which is also here. Microsoft is in Nigeria. We at KPMG as well, we've seen how tough it is for people to be able to come up with their sustainability reports, either because the data is not readily available, or the data is not clean, or it can't even be analyzed appropriately. It's not making sense when you analyze it. And so seeing that pain, we've been able to develop an ESG data management tool that can help an organization to able to gather the data from inception, aggregate it, and centralize ESG data management within the organization, building the necessary checks and controls in place, and have the dashboards that help us to see what is going on. So a lot is happening in the area of technology, in the area of data management, and those are trends that we will continue to see even more and more as we move forward into the future. And as I conclude, I would like to say that there's a call for action for CFOs and even accountants. I'm talking to accountants, my fellow accountants. There's a call for action to all of us. There's a lot to be done in this space. We've left a lot for the sustainability experts, but now, because of the IFRS S1, because of IFRS S1 and S2, the financial reporting and the non-financial reporting are now coming together. So we need to work very closely with the sustainability experts such that we can issue reports that make sense to the users. We cannot have a situation like I saw in somebody's annual report, a bank. They said that in their credit risk management aspect that, oh, they do not give out loans that do not have collaterals, that all loans are backed up when they were talking about their credit risk. I then looked at their sustainability report and they said, oh, to be able to support women and women businesses, they give out loans that are not backed up by any collateral. Those two definitely are in conflict. They are not speaking together. And that is exactly what IFRS S1 and S2 will be trying to seek to ensure doesn't happen again, whereby your financials is saying one thing, the non-financials is saying something else, and then the user is left confused. And so I will leave you with this quote that the CFO understands the risk and opportunities that an effective ESG program needs to be addressed. Along with their team, we are encouraging the CFOs to have the technical skill set, the corporate positioning that's needed to support companies in establishing well-governed ESG practices and move them forward. So there's a call to action for us as accountants. Thank you very much. I'm available to take questions from you.
Thank you very much, Tomi, for the insightful session. We quite appreciate. Can we drop some emojis and to appreciate her for a job well done? I know we had like a knowledge upgrade for some of us, and it was really a very educating session. So if you have any question, can you raise your hand electronically or you drop it in the chat box? Thus far, I've not seen any question in the chat box. If you want to ask your questions, kindly raise your hand so that we can take it. I can see only one hand. Let's have all that want to. If you want to ask a question, kindly raise your hand now so that we know how many questions we have before we start. Yeah, okay. So Dr. Babatunde Owolabi, can you ask your question? Unmute and ask your question, sir.
Oh, thank you very much for that. I really want to appreciate our presenter for that knowledge sharing. Now, my question is this. Now, for the normal financial statement, we know that there are auditors that go through the financials. Now, for this ESG reporting, is it going to be part of what the auditor will be looking out for, or there is going to be a different, maybe people that will be able to see that companies are not just issuing a greenwash, as you have said. Is there a framework to ensure that? And based on the sustainability reporting 1 and 2, are firm expected to issue a different report to be tagged sustainability reporting, or is it going to follow through the normal traditional reporting style? So those are the two areas that I just needed a clarification from Madam. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, sir. Tomi, can you take that? I have another question in the chat box from Babatunde Kolawole. Said, are there any tax benefits associated with the ESG initiative? So I think you can take the two together.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm just trying to scribble down so I don't forget. Okay, so for the first question, will the auditor be looking at it? Yes, the auditor is responsible for looking at everything within the annual report, because at the end of the day, you are going to make comments and then sign off. So you have the ESG opinion, separate the sustainability opinion, and then you have the opinion for the financial statements separately. You need a qualified person that understands sustainability. If the chartered accountant understands sustainability and can carry out the assurance of the non-financial aspect, why not if not? So what the roadmap has said is that it should be an independent, qualified professional, because he has opened it up to know that it can be an auditor. It may also be a non-audit person, a sustainability professional that can carry it out. Now, there are steps in carrying out a sustainability assurance. For organizations that issue their reports, it depends. I think a number of people would want it to come out about the same time, while some issue it separately. But in an IFRS environment, it will definitely have to come out about the same time. So as we are doing the audit for the financial statement, the audit for the non-financial statement would also need to happen. They have their own materiality as well, which is a bit different from the materiality that comes, that the auditors do. So there are steps to be able to carry out the assurance of the non-financial area. And when that is done, an opinion is issued. The auditor also issues his own opinion, and both are included in the financial statement at the end of the day. So I hope that answers the first question. And of course, if it's a different person that has done the sustainability assurance, as the external auditors that are going to sign off on the financial statements, it's also your responsibility to look at what they've done and be sure that it does not contradict with some of the things that are in your own area, to be able to then sign off your financial statement at the end of the day. Are there any tax benefits associated with ESG? Definitely, there are a number of tax benefits. Unfortunately, I'm not a tax expert, but I do know that one of the things my head of tax ESG typically talks about is what you call tax transparency. You will agree with me that most times when you look at the financial statement and you see the tax amount reported there, a lot of us go out thinking that that's the holistic tax the organization has paid for the year, but that's not true. The tax being reported is only the company income tax most times in that place, or the education tax. The VAT that you've also are often reported together. And so when you also then are able to go forward to issue a tax impact assessment, okay, when you also then are able to come up with a tax impact assessment report, what that helps you to do is to be able to say, how much taxes have we paid? We've paid royalty, we've paid all those local governments, whatever, all the things that we are paying all around the place, that they will not have a line item within the financial statements, but they are taxes that we are indeed paying. When you sit back and actually aggregate all of these taxes in a report together, it helps to be able to know the impact, positive impact you've made to government, to the society, and you can use that to actually go and get some browning points, which some organizations have done in some other jurisdiction. And even here, you've actually impacted the economy, and you are contributing to creating jobs and so many other things. A lot of us are not telling our tax stories properly. We only tell our stories based on that one line item in our financial statement. So it's another area that we begin to look at. That's when we begin to look at the tax benefits associated with ESG, even as we talk about the carbon market, there's a lot of tax elements as it relates to it that we can actually get. And maybe we probably need to get the experts in this area to come and talk about it. But there are tax benefits, and I do hope I've been able to provide some clarification in that regard.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a couple of questions from members in the chat box. Mostly the common one, I'll take the common one, said, what qualifies you as ESG expert? What certifications do you recommend for someone hoping to become an ESG expert? Then the second one is said that there are sustainability standards for the public sector. I think you've mentioned that, but you can emphasize again. Then is it at the implementation stage or reporting stage that greenwashing become issues in ESG reporting? That's from Fagbolate Mitope.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't want to use the word expertise because it can be controversial. I would just want to say, I mean, somebody that understands it. There are a number of certifications out there that people can take and even offered by universities abroad. There's the GRI standards. For you to be able to understand the GRI standards, they have their courses and certifications that can be taken, which if you understand the GRI standards, because all of them have been merged together into coming up with the IFRS S1 and S2, that would also help. So there's also the GAP, GAP Sustainability and Climate Risk certifications. There is the ISOs. They also have standards for sustainability. ISO 14001, 26000, 45001. Some are focused on HSC, some are focused on different aspects. There's also the CFA ESG certification. So there are quite a number of certifications that exist. If you Google it, a number of things will definitely jump out. And that begins to give some thoughts in terms of understanding of it and being able to bring our own accounting perspective to bear. There's also the question on sustainability. And then if you go to Coursera, there are a lot of short courses on sustainability there that you can also take, at least the beginning, having the beginner courses that then helps. Sustainability standards for public sector. There's the normal, what do you call it now? UNDP. I think someone is talking to, okay. You have the normal UNDP SDGs. Everybody is expected to be able to utilize that. And so even for public sector, as we begin to then, utilize that helps. This IFRS S1 and S2, they are basic things. The S1 aspect is actually basic because it's just saying have a strategy, have a framework. You can put up all of that. We've seen some public sector companies or some public sector organizations that have started taking steps even in this particular regard, and that is helping. For greenwashing, it starts from even when you are implementing, because when you are implementing, you are coming up with a strategy and saying these are the things we want to do. The strategy for ESG needs to be embedded within the strategy for the corporate organization as a whole so that they are speaking together. And as you are implementing the corporate organization strategy, you are inadvertently implementing the ESG strategy as well. When that is done and the whole workforce is educated and somebody is monitoring what is happening, by the time you get to reporting phase, it's easy because you can then see what you've reported. The report is assured. And if the assurance is well done, it's expected that the assurance would have picked out anything you've said. So for example, a company can say, in my factory, as at now, I've been able to reduce waste by 20%. That's a statement that's been made within the sustainability report. The assurer needs to go and check. How did you measure it? What is the waste? What was it before now? What is it today? What was the process of measuring it? Does it follow the normal acceptable best practice in terms of measuring and reducing waste? So all of those would have had to be done for the assurance to happen, such that when you are then saying this is what it is, and even if anybody comes to meet you, you can actually show evidence that, yes, this is what I have done, and this is what the assurance actually stated, and thereby minimizing the greenwashing that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you very much. And lastly, a member wants to know that do you think accountants and auditors require the assistance of experts in reporting on ESG, even to quantify the materiality and all that?
Definitely. Accountants and auditors are not ESG we didn't learn ESG now, even when we're doing our accounting, our Ican, whichever one we did, Ican, we didn't learn ESG there. So there's no way you can suddenly switch, even if you did one particular course, that doesn't make you then be able to have full understanding to then be able to say, okay, I understand carbon emission, I can look at it. What is double materiality in the area of ESG? What does it mean? How am I going to be able to carry out the audit? Even though we are saying it's assurance, they need the knowledge of audit and the assurance aspect to ensure that it's done well. But we need the technical knowledge of sustainability. Otherwise, they're just going to assure what we don't know, and we'll put a stamp there, and at the end of the day, there are holes all over the whole place. So both parties need each other. The auditors and the accountants need to go and develop their knowledge of what sustainability is all about to be comfortable to be able to carry out the assurance. The other side as well needs to understand what their auditors are looking out for so that as they are implementing, we are doing it with the end in mind. At least I'm an accountant, and I know when I started out this process, I know what struggle and reading up I had to do to get comfortable with the whole concept. I hope that helps.
Okay. Thank you so much, and quite appreciate your time, sharing your time with us. We have some other questions, but because of time, we have to put it to an, we have to end it at this point. It's been a very insightful session, as always. At a point, we were up to 330 on this call, and that's how we have always been doing it. Pride ourselves as a model district, and we do it every month during our technical sessions. I want to thank you for sharing your Sunday evening with us. Some of our members have asked, we'll share the slides later, and we'll get to see some of these times. I'll get the slides later, as she has promised to get the slides. And also, we want to thank you, Tomi Adepoju, for your time today and your sharing the insight about ESG, at least demystifying what ESG is all about. You've been able to bring it to an understandable level, and I think it will provoke more and more studies from members of the profession, accountants and auditors, who might take interest in learning more about ESG, sustainability, reporting, and all the likes. Thank you very much. I'll call on Dr. Titi for the vote of thanks. We have a little token, a memorabilia. You cannot pay your huge, cannot afford your huge pay, but we thank you for honoring us, and we pray that God bless you massively. So, Dr. Titi, can you take the vote of thanks, please? Okay, I guess Dr. Titi is not available. So on behalf of the district, the management of the district. Okay.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Tomi, for that very insightful session. We really appreciate your taking our time to take us through this. Very, very insightful. I thought I knew about ESG, but I think I'm seeing so much more about it now. I take interest in it, and I guess I have a lot of people also who are interested in knowing more. Thank you for taking us through this. Thank you for making it as simple as possible to us to be able to flow with you. On behalf of the chairman of the district, the pioneer chairman, and the past chairman of the district, members of the district, we want to say a big thank you for the time you have taken to put this together and to ensure that we are better off when we start talking about ESG. When others see us and we talk, they will think we are experts, not knowing that we just got a glimpse from you. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and a good evening to everybody. Thanks.
Okay, distinguished members of our district, we thank you for, and our guests as well, we thank you for making it a date for us, with us for another technical session. We want to appreciate your presence, and we hope that we